For 7 years, the light on Eilean Mòr never failed. Not once. On the 26th of December, 1900, a relief ship finally reached the rock and found the truth. No flag on the mast, no men on the landing. Gate closed, door closed. Inside, an overturned chair, a stopped clock. 2 sets of oilskins gone, 1 left hanging. 3 keepers vanished from a rock in the North Atlantic. No bodies, no note, no struggle. Only a logbook remained, and the last word any of them wrote down was storm. The Northern Lighthouse Board called this rock Eilean Mòr. The fishermen of Lewis called it something else entirely, and for centuries refused to sleep on it at all. So what actually happened on Flannan Isles? The Flannan Isles sit 20 miles west of Lewis, Scotland. 7 bare rocks the old fishermen called the 7 Hunters. Sailors would not spend a night there. Some would not even step ashore without asking permission of whatever or whoever they believed still watched the island. The largest rock, Eilean Mòr, held the ruin of a tiny chapel dedicated to a 7th century monk named Flannan. Shepherds from Lewis graze sheep there each summer, and by long custom always addressed the island out loud before landing, as though it were a person owed respect, not a piece of property. In 1899, the Northern Lighthouse Board built a station on that same rock anyway, engineered by David Allen Stevenson, of the same family that had built most of Scotland's great lighthouses for 4 generations. The tower stood 190 feet above the sea, reachable only when the swell allowed it, sometimes not for weeks at a stretch. 3 men worked it at a time, on rotation, with a 4th always resting on shore. In December 1900, the crew was James Ducat, the principal keeper, 20 years into the job and known for precision, Thomas Marshall, his assistant, and Donald MacArthur, filling in for a keeper sent home sick. Supply boats came roughly every 2 weeks, weather allowing. Between visits, the 3 men were as isolated as anyone in Britain. No radio, no telegraph. Just the light, the rock, and the log. On the 15th of December, a passing steamer called the Arctur noted something wrong. The Flannan light was not lit. The captain logged it, but rough seas kept him from reporting it ashore for days. And by the time word reached the mainland, no one thought to move quickly. The relief ship, the Hesperus, was already running late, held in port by the same weather that had grounded half the fishing fleet on Lewis. It did not reach Eilean Mòr until the 26th. No flag was raised to greet it. No answer came to the ship's horn, even after Captain Jim Harvey ordered it sounded twice more. He sent a keeper named Joseph Moore, who knew all 3 men personally, ashore alone. Moore called out at the gate. Nothing answered but the wind. Inside, 1 bed was unmade. A chair in the kitchen lay on its side. The clock had stopped, and by the door, 2 full sets of oilskin coats and boots were gone. A 3rd set still hung on its peg. That detail matters more than any other. On an island with no shelter from the Atlantic, a keeper did not step outside without his oilskins, not for a routine task, not even for a few minutes. One of the 3 men had gone out without his. Outside, the gate and the fence around the station stood untouched. No sign of any struggle at the lighthouse itself. No broken glass, no forced doors. In the logbook, the final formal entry was dated the 15th. After that, nothing. For the first time since the light was built, the station had gone completely silent, and no one on the mainland had any way of knowing for 11 days. The Northern Lighthouse Board sent its own superintendent, Robert Muirhead, to investigate in person. He had inspected this exact station before, on routine visits, and knew precisely what should and should not be there. He spent 3 days walking the island end to end. What he found was at the West Landing, the smaller of the island's 2 landing points, used only when the sea was calm enough to risk it. A crane used to lift supplies, normally bolted 110 feet above the water, had been ripped clean from its mountings. The ropes were torn and tangled around it. A storage box, lashed even higher up the cliff, was simply gone. No trace of it anywhere on the rock. Turf had been stripped from the ground as high as 200 feet above the sea, gouged out in a way he could not explain by wind alone. In all his years inspecting these islands, Muirhead had never seen storm damage like it. His conclusion: a wave or a series of waves, driven by weather violent enough to be almost unprecedented for the site, had broken clean over the West Landing. His theory: the men went out to secure equipment at that landing during or just after such a storm, a routine task they had likely done, in bad weather, many times before, without incident. 1, perhaps 2, were caught by a wave and pulled into the sea. The third, seeing it happen, ran for oilskins he never got time to fasten, and went after them, or waited helplessly at the edge until the water took him too. It explained the missing oilskins. It explained the overturned chair, quit in a hurry mid-task. It explained a clock nobody came back to wind. There was no locked door, no struggle inside the lighthouse, because whatever happened, happened outside it, all at once, in a matter of minutes. The official report satisfied almost no one. Within weeks, newspapers were filling the silence with their own answers. A foreign vessel had taken the men by force, a mutiny had broken out between the keepers, a sea serpent had come ashore, even that men had been snatched off the rock by something not of this world. But no single source did more to shape the legend than a poem. In 1912, 12 years after the disappearance, Wilfrid Wilson Gibson published Flannan Isle and gave the world the details everyone now remembers: a meal left half-eaten on the table, a chair flung back as though in fright, an overwhelming dread that met the rescuers at the door before they had even opened it. None of that is in Robert Muirhead's report. His kitchen was tidy. The dishes were put away. There is no mention of food left out at all, half-eaten or otherwise. A century of documentaries, articles, and campfire retellings have quoted the poem as though it were the official record. Sometimes, without realizing, the two were ever separate. And in a strange way, the legend outgrew the lighthouse itself, drawing visitors and film crews to Eilean Mòr to this day, long after most people forgot which details were ever verified and which were simply good verse. The real record is stranger in a different way. Not a scene of terror, but a scene of order, interrupted mid-routine by something that left almost no trace behind at all. Modern reviews of the case, by meteorologists and engineers who have studied the Outer Hebrides coastline, keep landing in the same place Muirhead did more than a century ago. Waves over 60 feet are recorded in this stretch of the Atlantic most winters, and modern wave buoys off Lewis have measured swells even higher during the worst storms. Against a 110-foot cliff platform, in exactly the right storm, that is more than enough to explain everything Muirhead documented. The lighthouse was fully automated in 1971, and the last keepers left the rock for good. No one has lived on Flannan Isles since. The isolation that made this mystery possible in 1900 is now permanent, by design. There is no one left out there for the sea to take, and no one left to write the next entry in a logbook that will never again go silent by accident. One question still has no clean answer. Every keeper on that rotation was trained never to work the West Landing alone, and never in bad weather for exactly this reason. James Ducat had worked lighthouses for 20 years. He knew the rule better than anyone on that rock, and he was, by every account, the most careful of the three. So why did three careful, experienced men break the one rule built specifically to keep them alive? That is the part the log cannot tell us, and the part no wave height chart will ever answer. What do you think made them go out there together?